Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to get started here in just a moment. But just while we're waiting here for the rest of our folks to come on into our room, I just wanted to see what everyone is doing for the holidays or what holiday you are celebrating. If you are celebrating a holiday right now, go ahead and type into the chat. Make sure you can use that chat function.
Second.
Kelly, what holiday are you celebrating during this season?
So we are celebrating Christmas. And many years ago, my husband learned how to make my mother's noodles. And I may or may not box you out if you try to get to the noodles at the stove before me. So certainly all the things that come with the Christmas holiday, but those noodles only get made twice a year. So I may or may not be a little bit excited about the noodles that my husband learned how to make.
That sounds amazing. What's in the noodles? What makes them so good?
Is some people they're long and thin, so they have a chicken stock broth. But I love to have arguments with people when they say no, they're dumplings. I'm like, no, no, they're not. And so because they're long and thin, he rolls them out very special, and they're just lovely. If they're just such, they're like a comfort food, if that makes sense. So,
Sounds
yeah,
amazing, and you're making me
yeah.
hungry. I think it's
Yeah.
lunchtime right now, so I'm ready
Yeah,
to eat.
my smoothie is kicking away, but
Yes, same here. Well, I see, and apologies if I pronounce this incorrectly, but it looks like Chevelle in the chat is saying that she is going to be traveling during the holiday season. I am too. So I am going to be in Costa Rica. I'm very excited to get away. We have Alexis is going to be celebrating Christmas by seeing lights, watching movies, and cooking. Oh, that all sounds so wonderful. I love it. Wonderful. Well, without further ado, we just want to welcome you all. I'm going to pass the mic over to Brandy. Brandy, are you on? You are muted if you are trying to speak. Oh, I don't hear her right now. Okay. Well, that's all right. So, Brandy, pop on if you'd like to at any point. But I just want to welcome you all. Thank you for joining us. I know the end of the year can get hectic and busy, so we are excited for today's session to feel more prepared for the end of this year and moving into 2025. So, just very, very exciting. Oh, it looks like Brandy's having
Oh, is my
having
screen showing?
Yes, we're just having some tech issues. That's what's the
Yes,
perfect.
I'm sorry. We're ready.
That's
We're
all
ready.
right. Brandy, did you want to take it away from here?
Sure. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good afternoon. I guess I'll cut my video on, you all. All right. Thank you all for your patience. Good afternoon. I'm Brandy Gray, talent management professional, and committee member of the 2024 D&I committee. I'm so glad that you all reserved time in your day to join us for this relevant discussion around aligning planning styles with organizational objectives. So in today's session, we'll explore how to assess 2024 goals using data-driven metrics. We'll talk about how to identify key factors that influence success or created challenges. And we'll talk about how to apply the start, stop, continue framework to develop actionable strategies for 2025. So if you're like me, you're eager to hear from our speaker. So we're going to address a few housekeeping items and then we'll dive right in. So our speaker today has prepared a special presentation for us all. So we welcome each of you to participate. You can use the chat, you can use the QA function, either or is fine. And we'll have time at the end for Q&A also. But feel free to use those options to connect with us. We want you to engage, interrupt, speak out, come off of mute, whatever you want to do. We want you to engage. That's big for us. Also, we'd love to hear your feedback about the webinar. So our speaker, Kelly, she will send out a survey. And so we'll use that information to just continue to provide you and our members and our guests with speakers and different topics that you guys feel are relevant. Finally, a follow-up email will be sent out regarding the CE credit information. So we want to make sure that you get those credits. So we'll make sure we send that information out. All right, y'all, let's jump on in. Kelly Knowles, our speaker, is an exemplary. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, you all. Kelly Knowles is an exemplary workshop leader, public speaker, published author, and coach. She's worked with individuals and groups nationwide. Kelly incorporates the insights she learned while earning her Six Sigma Green Belt, MBA degree, ATD Adult Learning Certification, and Color Code Trainer Certification in her interactions. She combines her academic knowledge and her training with her 20 plus years of real world sales, teaching, and training experience, all of those things to provide professional and personal insights. In her downtime, she also enjoys watching Sunday night PBS. She leads a professional book club, loves reading. She actually started during quarantine hosting a Saturday sort of faith study session. And so that's been going on since January of 2020. So she's still doing that now. Lifelong learner, family person. And actually she shared with us that two of her oldest grandchildren have recently entered the military. So one of them finished the Marine boot camp in October, and the other one will begin Navy boot camp next week. So excited to get to know more about Kelly, excited to hear from you, Kelly. I'll go ahead and let you share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandy. It's so good to be with you all. So I'm going to click on allow and share. So if you all will give me a little bit of feedback, I'm going to make sure I can see our chat. And if you all will let me know if you see my screen correctly and hear me correctly, I would be grateful.
Yes, it looks good.
All right. And feel free to come off camera if you're comfortable. One thing that I want to emphasize is that I love, love, love interaction. So I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat. Brandy is going to keep me accountable on my time. I'm also going to start my watch and we will go, but definitely love interaction. Feel free to throw questions in the chat, come off mute, etc., whatever you are comfortable with, because I know it is easy to be distracted. So I'm curious if anyone ever feels, maybe you do right now, like a scattered squirrel. What do you think? Do you ever feel like a scattered squirrel? Now, if you're wondering, Kelly, what is a scattered squirrel? It is definitely, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. There is a website, by the way, called scatteredsquirrel.com. I discovered this website several years ago, and I build my planner. So I love to do things digital. I love technology, but I also have kind of an analog custom planner that I put together every year to plan. And I started off getting just some of the free templates from Scattered Squirrel, and then I've been just doing some customization over the years. So there is actually a website called Scattered Squirrel. So if you ever feel that way, that is a fun website with a lot of little planners and templates. But if you feel like a scattered squirrel, I'm going to have to ask you to stop for a moment. And one of the things that Rochelle and Brandy and I were talking about as we were preparing and getting started this morning is what we have on tap, what's going on, all the things that we're trying to finish before the holiday next week. So I'm going to ask you to stop for a moment and breathe. And can we please, please, please celebrate? You know, I have a really good friend who was a full-time working mom And she decided to go back and get her degree. She was one of those folks that just hadn't had a chance to finish her degree. And so as an adult, with everything else going on, she's farms, she has horses, and etc. She decided to go back and get her degree. And some of you all may be pursuing education adjacent to doing a full-time role and supporting your family. And as the term is, all the things. So I asked her, I said, okay, you're about to graduate. When's the party? She said, oh, we're not having a party. And I said, yes, we are. You have accomplished something. And I want to encourage you all to celebrate your achievements. Sometimes, even if they're small, I think we often dismiss and go, yeah, it's over, it's done, it's checked off the list. But have you given yourself that moment of pause? So here we are, December 17th. Cannot believe it. What could you put in the chat that you could celebrate about 2024? And it could be you got a great haircut. It could be that you were able to fully get your entire team put together this year, and there's not any more openings where you're still doing recruiting. What could you put in the chat that would give the rest of us some inspiration for what you could celebrate right here, right now, this morning? What you got? Stronger team. That's a big deal. Absolutely. Thank you, Brandy. Anyone else? I really want us to encourage ourselves. You know, the year that I wrote a book a couple of years ago, was able to get it out on Audible and all the things. And yet I had a moment where I'm like, I'm getting nothing accomplished. I'm accomplishing nothing. And somebody looked at me and said, Knowles, you wrote a book and survived a murder. I like the way you put that, Chevelle, survived. That's a big deal. And so we don't always give ourselves, especially for those people that kind of just keep producing and we keep going towards our goals, we don't always give ourselves that time to say, hey, I want to celebrate this. And they're not always big things. Sometimes they're those small things where maybe you've learned better situational awareness. You've learned some new things for your toolbox. And so I wanted us to make sure to take a moment and give ourselves that. And as you get ready for your planning, I'm sure you're doing some planning already for 2025. Give yourself that moment. When will we celebrate? How will we celebrate? And what can we celebrate now? I hope that tracks with you. In all of the sessions that I do, I like to use this framework called Discover, Develop, and Dig In. And it's just going to give you a little bit of a feel for where we're going to go today. And we're going to move fast. So Brandy's got all my contact information. She'll put that in the chat so that you have it if you're like, hey, I want to take a deeper dive on this, or I'd like to know a little bit more. So we're going to start our discovery by looking at 2024 in review. And that's going to give us the ability not just to lean into the past, but to think about what 2024 looked like and how can that inform our 2025. Then we're going to look into the start, stop, continue framework. Many of you are probably already familiar with this in some version. I use it with my coaching clients to help us kind of frame out. I like to do a 3-month program. So we use this to kind of frame out where we want to look and go for the next 3 months. But I've seen start, stop, continue in a lot of ways. And so we're going to take a look at that today as well. Finally, we're going to look at planning style. I've got some resources for you and how that also helps you to align with organizational objectives, even if your style is not just like your organization's, because at some point we've got to be in alignment. So that is where we're going today. We're going to start out with some discovery. I couldn't help myself. I think this is a corgi. For those of you who are really good at knowing your puppy dogs, you may know exactly what this is. But when I saw the caption for this, it looks like yours. Oh, Sarah, you'll have to tell us what you have. When I saw this, I thought, you know, this is how sometimes we have to start. We have to start small. And I actually put this sticker in my holiday cards this year. And I have a phrase that I use on the back of my business card that says, every step is greater than the sum. And what it means is those incremental things can get us to a really good big thing. So I love this picture of this puppy dog, maybe jumping over some Christmas wrapping, who knows? And the caption is goals. You got to start somewhere. And so often we think we have to start super big, and sometimes it's just those little chunks. So I'm going to ask you to do some reflection today, to take some breaths, to think through 2024. So I threw up on a calendar so that maybe you can, scribble down on a Post-it. I like to write on a remarkable, something that gives you the moment just to take a pause and consider 2024. What would you say worked? And what would you say didn't? The older I get, the faster time goes. And so when I look at this over the year, I'm like, how did we're already at December. And I know I sound like a broken record, but that is just something I continue to see is how fast time moves. So have you asked yourself what worked and what didn't? And this is going to be important for your planning because often what I ask myself is what worked? Can I replicate that? Can I put that into some sort of system or process for repeating? And then I'm not reinventing the wheel on everything. The other thing I want to look at is what didn't work. And we're going to take a deeper dive into this because if it didn't work, it doesn't mean it won't work. It may be, how do we take a moment and tweak that? So again, super interactive today. Feel free to come off mute, throw out any questions or comments as we travel through this. If we think about our goal assessment, which we're moving into, one of the things that we want to look at is factors that influenced our success or created challenges. Now, one of the things that I know we don't have time for today is defining success, because what success is to Alexia may different than how Andrew views success. And so that is something that is, you want to be mindful of that. What does success look like to you? And it looks like mine. Oh, I like that, Sarah. So we want to be able to think about what that is. And then where does that align with our organization? So I wanted to give you a gauge. Now, if you already have kind of your own metrics set up for your organization, use that. I just wanted to give us some sort of something. So this is a little bit more of a grading sheet, if you will. And this is a target, and I'll show this on the next few slides as we look at some of these questions. But maybe you say, oh, you know what, Kelly, exceeded for me really is 95, not greater than 100. This is for you. This is not hard and fast rules. I just wanted to give you a baseline starting point as you're taking a look at 2024. So if you've got a different way of looking at it, I respect that. Do what's going to work for you. So we're going to look at 3 key areas today. I want us to look at talent management, operational efficiency, and budget and resource management. Now, we can't get all of this done. I'm just giving you some prompts as you're thinking about your 2024 review. So let's look at talent management. If you think about how could we review our talent management, and if there's something missing, this was just a fast list I pulled up. Maybe there's something that would be good to put in the chat that will help the rest of us. I always talk about we are better together. So if you think about your talent management, here's some prompts to look at. Sorry about that. Maybe the time to hire, promotion rates, employee engagement. You can see these are really big buckets. So we're just trying to take that big picture scope of how do we feel like things went compared to maybe some of our metrics that we have. And some of this is a little bit more observational type of data. Performance review completions. I hear a lot of people do that in spring, but then there's a lot that happens this time of the month as well. So in the area of talent management, what seems to hit for you as an area to take a look at? Time to hire, turnover. Is there anything missing for you in the area of talent management?
I guess attendance would probably be employee engagement, attendance at training sessions. I know we have training completions like programs, but I was thinking attendance at the actual sessions, but I guess that would be considered employee engagement.
It could be. It could
Yeah.
be. There's a couple other places I popped that in, but again, this could be exactly the best place for you. Operational efficiency. So here's a few to maybe look at in terms of operational efficiency. HR response time to inquiries. Will you have policy compliance? System adoption rates. Maybe you had a new system that you rolled out this year. Was it used? Whether that was for training, whether that was for people to get special information, whatever. Maybe there was some adoption that you're taking a look at. How many people actually used our systems or even our newest systems? Benefit enrollment rates. You know, November is a big season for all the things around benefits. And then finally, onboarding completions. You know, onboarding can be different sets of emphasis depending on the organization. But do you have certain things where we want everyone to go through a certain program in their first 90 days or in their first 60 days? Is that a metric to take a look at when you're reviewing 2024? Now, some of these may have more emphasis by leadership or by you. You may have determined these things, but this is going to give you some gauges to think through on operational efficiency. Again, if there's something missed, please put it in the chat. Finally, if we think about budget and resource management, cost per hire variations. Now, one of the things that I want to be aware of and speak to is that this may vary. You may have some job families or job roles where perhaps their relocation is paid for. That can change in terms of cost depending on whose line item, whose budget that falls in. So your cost per hire may vary, but we're looking also at maybe the time to bring in someone. How much, you know, I understand that posting jobs on LinkedIn is not cheap for some organizations. Your training budget utilization. That is, if you have a training budget, where there are things that were utilized in that budget, where things went over, where there were other areas that weren't used. The return on investment for your HR technology. And then benefits cost management. Finally, recruitment spend effectiveness. There may be some roles that you're recruiting for that, you know, you're finding that needle in a haystack where there are other roles. You've got the 100 to 200 applicants and you're just trying to sift through it with whatever ATS or format that you have. But there are various things that you can take a look at in terms of budgets and resources. What's missing, y'all? Anything missing? So these are some areas that maybe as you're doing your 2024 review that you can start to zone in on if you need to tag some numbers and metrics to it. You know, something as simple as how many people did we hire? How many stayed? How long did it take them to complete their onboarding? If you've never done anything like this, again, don't try to take on the whole, but where can you find those areas that will have the most impact for your 2025 planning?
Hey, Kelly,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing your presentation anymore.
Anybody else having that trouble?
I don't know if it's just me. Can somebody
I'm
put
not.
in the chat, anybody else? No,
No, it's
it said
there.
it's there. Okay.
Okay,
It's just
good,
me then.
good.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, Brandy.
No, sorry about that. I'll figure it out.
Okay, all right. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind, this is kind of like if you've ever done a SWOT analysis, this feels a little bit like it. There are always contributing factors to when we take a look at this. You're not living in a vacuum, you're not living in a bubble isolated on these things. So are there internal factors? Resource availability. Every time I turn around, I'm not hearing anyone say we have enough people. I'm hearing people say we're trying to do less with more. We're trying to be more efficient with who we have. So how are your resource availability? Leadership support. This goes back to that word alignment you've heard me say a few times is, you know, are you setting up yourself as that strategic partner with leadership so that you get the support you need to accomplish those things that have been set for you? The capacity of your team. You know, this may change. Life happens. People have parents, kids. They go on parental leave. There are so many things that can impact the capacity of your team. I talked to someone earlier today in this role I'm in for a contract, and we were just talking about PTO. And I said, hey, you know, are you able to really set away when you take your PTO. And he said, they want me to step away, but I also have metrics. So I always feel like I need to work because I have to make sure that I meet my goals. And so he's got that tension, that push pull that he is working through. System and tool effectiveness. There is so much being written about AI. That is one of the areas I'm loving reading on LinkedIn. Today, I just read something about, which generative AI is good for what. And I was happy to see one of my favorites, Claude, coming into play for content. But I'm also thinking about the next time I put something like this together, do I have to use PowerPoint? That's a small thing. What are some other things that you're saying, hey, we've got to learn more about this tool so that it can be more effective, so that we get more bang for our buck? Flip it. External factors. Y'all have any of that? Does the external world ever kick in for you and impact you? Market conditions. Trends. What are you seeing in terms of trend? I remember starting to read about AI about 2.5 years ago, and some people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Other people are like, yes. And so it is definitely something trending. Now people are looking at, some people have already figured it out. How do we want to use it? Others are like, how do we use it safely and so on? And there may be other industry trends that you're taking a look at. Regulatory changes and economic impact. Just this week, I read an article that they're looking at, and I've not researched this, so I'm okay being corrected, that they are looking at changing the retirement age again in 2025. Well, what does that mean for HR? Does that mean there will be people that were originally planning on retiring that choose not to? If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, he's a very locally known, actually probably internationally known at this point, financial person. He's had some things come out recently in the press where he is saying 62, 62. Well, 62 is not the full retirement age, but he's saying 62 is the age that I would recommend people retire with these parameters. So there are definitely regulatory things that could come into play. I get tickled. My mother is going to be 77 in January. She has worked for Ace Hardware since I was a little girl, so it's been a minute. And she was telling me the other day that it's getting a little harder to climb a ladder. One of her jobs is that she does all the merchandising for stores. So when a store is being redesigned, or if they have a new store come in, one of her jobs is to come in and make things look pretty. And if you have noticed in the Nashville area, the particular franchisee that owns the stores that she's been with for ages, they have moved into Nashville. And I understand what they've done with the store in East Nashville is amazing. There are many other stores that are being redone. So she's telling me, at almost 77 years old, those ladders are getting a little harder to climb. Y'all, I don't know if I could climb them now. And she's also saying, I wonder if I'll retire next year. So these are definitely impact things. And there's a part of me that says, I wonder if their HR people know that she's like on a ladder at 77, but you know what? Age is just a number. Anything missing when it comes to contributing factors? And I'm going to ask that you all look at this in a group, because I want us to spend just a couple moments. Please come off mute, throw it in the chat. But what are some things that you could maybe say, I know we all have this in common in terms of some challenges or some successes as we wrap up our review of 2024 and move into planning for 2025? What do you think? What would you guess would be some common challenges or common successes as a group we have here today? Because we are not living on an island alone, even if it feels
For
like it
challenges,
sometimes.
I would say customer satisfaction, the NPS, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you, Brandy. I'll throw one out. I'm hoping this will get a little bit of input. A hybrid work environment. Retaining talent with inflation. Thank you, Sarah. I spoke with someone a few months ago, and originally their organization was anybody that went remote was going to get to stay remote. And so this particular individual, they sold a vehicle, they moved further out, and just realizing, hey, we can make some changes in terms of lifestyle. And then the policy changed. And I thought about their manager having to deliver this information. Well, this person is a very in-demand IT person, and so they chose to change organizations. They didn't want to, but there was kind of a hard and fast policy change, and they said, "Look, this isn't, affordable for me anymore. I already live even further out. My partner and I dropped down to one vehicle, and so on." So these are a lot of decisions that go on. The flexible work schedule. Thank you, Chevelle. These are common challenges I would offer a lot of organizations have. Now, there are some industries, my husband builds cabinets for a living. What you see behind me, he built. They didn't really have any impact. Most of what they do, they go to a physical location, and it was almost like the pandemic didn't exist for them. And there was really not much change. They were considered that type of environment. Thank you. This is really a good comment. Hybrid work environment can be a challenge and success depending on the company policy and employee. I might almost add to that the skills of a manager, because so often, there's a lot of different perceptions, and it's always interesting to talk about different people's point of view. So it's absolutely can be a challenge and a success. I like that you put that where it's not an either or, it can be a both and. Super good, y'all. All right, so let's go into 2025. How's it feel? 2025. So if we take a moment, I want to let you know that I have a one pager that I've put together, and we'll put those links at the end where you can get that one pager that's kind of this overall yearly review. We're talking about a lot of topics that can go really deep and wide. And so I wanted to make sure to give you something that's just kind of a one pager, because often people have to digest information. Anybody out there where you need a minute to digest the information that you hear. And so I wanted to just let you know that. So we're going to go into a speed round. And this is where we're going to look at stop, start, and continue. So if you're game, pull out a sheet of paper, pull up 3 Post-its. If it's not too distracting, throw up an Excel spreadsheet, whatever makes you happy in terms of your note taking. I know distractions are real. And I probably don't want to know how many emails you may have read during our time together. So if you can give yourself a moment for this space, I hope you will, because this is something I'm going to be using this when I go on my planning retreat the last weekend of December. I do that every year, just me, myself, and I just get away and I start to think about this. This is also something you can do with your team. I don't want to take that out of our conversation together. The next couple of things are absolutely things you can do interdepartmentally as well as with your team. So we're going to look at this planning framework: start, stop, and continue. And I'm curious, feel free to throw it in the chat if any of you have used this in various forms. Again, I use it with my coaching clients to kind of help plan out where we want to go for the next couple of months together. So we're going to look at start. What is it for 2025 you want to start? And here are some prompts for you. Maybe there's some initiatives that you want to implement. They may not be new. You may just not have been able to get to them this year because there were competing priorities. Are there emerging trends you want to assess and potentially adopt? Depending on your industry, some trends, you're not the early adopters. I've been in law firms for the last 14 years. I'm doing a contract role right now with an international law firm, and we've been rolling out a new platform that I've been helping to lead. And one of the things that this firm has done has been extremely intentional, and they're pretty organized about their AI usage. Where other firms, when I talk to people, are like, yeah, we're not touching it. We're not even there yet. But if you think about client confidentiality, such as in a law firm, you think about HIPAA, there's so many elements And so this is one of those things that really has to be done in a very strategic way. And then the tactical execution is also incredibly important. So is there an emerging trend you need to assess and potentially adopt? Finally, are there some gaps to be filled? And maybe you've realized this year, you know what? We need to sharpen our ability to do data analysis. Boy, I'm hearing this over and over again. It's not just about putting together an Excel spreadsheet. It's about how can you create a dashboard from that? How can you make those numbers meaningful? Smart sheets is another avenue that I'm hearing a lot of people do that, and just goes on and on and on. But data analysis, is there a gap for you in your organization on that? So what gaps need to be filled? Can you start your planning with that? Now, stop. When we think about the stop, again, I want to keep in mind this is not an either or. You either stop it or you don't. It could also be an adjusting. So is there something that you're doing right now that you have the control to stop that's not adding value? There are some things we do, I call it the slog. uh, um, we have to do them. Maybe that is because the person who makes the decisions is still, we still haven't been fully able to influence. Yeah, this isn't a have to. But is there something you're doing now that is not adding value? And it's time to stop. Tying into that, is there something causing frustration? Now, we do not live in a Pollyanna world. There will always be something likely causing frustration at various levels. But is there something that you can stop? Finally, is there anything that's wasting resources? I'll give you something controversial. In my last role as a training manager, and in the role prior to that as a senior trainer, we opted to move from physical onboarding notebooks, and these weren't just one location offices, to a digital version. So if you think about this, there might have been some weeping and gnashing of teeth by some people. But I also found that the copy centers in each of the locations would often do several ahead of time. They would try to get some extra work done, if you will. Well, when it came time to updating the materials, there was an incredible amount of waste. I will never forget cleaning out a training room that had been prior to my coming on board. It was thousands and thousands of pages that had been pre-printed in an effort to be efficient, and they all went into the trash because none of them were current. That was a waste of resources. There was a way to do it better. And so, again, that sounds maybe controversial for some people. You threw away paper. But again, just something to think about. All right, finally, what do you want to continue? What do you want to continue? What's working well? I mentioned that earlier when we looked at that big calendar of 2024. What is working well that you want to keep doing it? Maybe your one-on-ones, the format that you used this year worked well, your performance evaluations, how you did your budgets. We could continue to go on. And then, is there anything that gives you a competitive advantage? Keep doing it until it's time to shift. And then finally, if you can, what are your folks valuing? Are you able to put some focus in on continuing some things that your employees value? If there's anything that's missed, please throw it in the chat. If there's something that you say, I'm going to stop doing this, or this was a sweet secret sauce we discovered this year, and we're going to continue it. I'd love it if you are willing to share that. All right, we're going to move into your 2025 strategy. But first, I got to throw a wrench in our conversation. And that wrench is things on the radar and not on the radar. I bet you can think about right now for 2024, things that were on your radar and they continued. And I'm also going to bet there are things on 2025 that's already on your radar, you're already planning for. But I'm also willing to bet, except I'm not going to play pool with Brandy because I understand she is a professional. I'm willing to bet that there are some things for 2024 that were not on your radar. And I'm going to get a little personal. I'm going to share a couple things that were not on my radar, not because this is self-disclosure, but just to get you thinking. I love this quote. As far as the research has been that I was able to do, I think Einstein really said this one. Failure is success in progress. You know, that is important when we think about our goal setting and our goal review is what is our viewpoint of this word failure? Is failure an opportunity to do better? And we can go find quote after quote on this. So I wanted just to invite your thinking around that. There has to be a flexibility factor. For those of you, you're already thinking, yeah, Kelly, it's a contingency plan. Absolutely. But I thought flexibility factor sounded good. So I'll give you a quick run through, not a lot of detail, of my year. In the fall of 2023, someone heard me speak at a conference and approached me in January. We put together an entire series for this healthcare company in Nashville for their new managers on leadership training. We did so many fun topics, and we finished that up at the end of November. That was not on my radar until I received that call in January. I had tried to influence that call, but it wasn't on my radar, and it turned out to be a great thing for 2024 that I really hope to continue to replicate for other organizations. It was super fun and effective. Now, in February, not on my radar, I had left a firm I'd been at for 10 and a half years, and I had been recruited away. Anybody ever had that happen to them? And almost 2 years later, we had a parting of the ways. Again, not on my radar. And so some things we plan for and some things we don't. Brandy mentioned this earlier. We find out that one of the kids in our family graduated from high school in May. At the same time said, I'm going into the Marines. Y'all, all you have to do is look at the different in face and you might get a little bit of an understanding of my feelings. And they are now doing some additional training in North Carolina. We hope that they will be on a flight Friday. So maybe we can see him for a little bit for the holidays. Not on the radar. What that meant is if you're like, Kelly, why are you sharing? Because that meant a change in some work plans. We ended up making some plans for travel and so on that were not on our radar at the beginning of the year. And we all have this. Life happens to every single one of us. Now, if we continue, I've been in a contract role for the last several months and doing a lot with this whole new platform. If you're familiar with the term ServiceNow, I have learned so much in the last several months about ServiceNow because I'm leading a platform change. So we're actually moving an entire training library from one platform. Actually, we've already done that part to a new one. We've been doing taxonomies and curating content and all of the things. Continuing on, I had a few keynotes this year, and one of my favorite is with an organization some of you all may be very familiar with, which is ATD. And so we did a keynote out in Cracker Barrel. It is where we had our conference this year, and I had the opportunity to be the afternoon keynote, and there were some others not on the radar for 2024. So what are you saying, Kelly? Expect the unexpected. Have we contingencies to recognize that sometimes we have to pivot and flex, and they can be really good things. So as we dig in and finish up our time together, I love this quote by Maya Angelou. Hopefully today has given you some new ideas or ways to think about your review of 2024 and setting up your planning for 2025. I wish I were smart enough to be a scientist. I want to be a nerd and smart. I'm just not there. But I love neuroscience because it says I can keep learning. The old dog can learn new tricks. And so as we learn, as we come with new information, we can continue to move forward. Brady, thanks for your accountability. I love that. So for 2025, I've got some cheesy pictures for you. And I just want you to ask yourself, what are you most excited about? I have a keynote in January with a bunch of IT guys. I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. What are you looking forward to for 2025? And maybe you don't know yet. Maybe it's not there yet. The second thing is, what is it that it may be time to face straight ahead? so that you can build a plan for it. You've kind of just been avoiding it. You've been putting it out of the way. You know, dust builds, y'all, clutter builds. It like grows on you. Are there things that it's time to now take out and face straight ahead so that you can develop a plan for it? You've been avoiding it. You've been putting it off. Remember, you don't have to do this alone. And finally, what can distract you? What can distract you? My watch, even though I had it on do not disturb, dinged in this conversation. I know my phone rang. I'm sure there's pop-up after pop-up of emails that you all are seeing and maybe addressing depending on what's going on. Somebody may have came in your office. Somebody may have walked by. Distractions are real. So then now the question is, do you know what can distract you? And are those some things that you can start to build a plan for? Because we can end up distracted from where we need to go. There are things that will love to come in like a little mosquito, and it will be an itch that we want to scratch per se, but is that where we are? You know, one of the ladies I worked for 10 and a half years used to say, is this the best and highest use of your time? And I have stolen and repeated that constantly. Is this the best and highest use of your time? That is a great question to ask yourself. I thought it was so wise when she said that to me one time. And I just continue to think about that depending on what's going on. So as you think about tools in your toolbox, what is your planning style? We're going to go through this slide very quickly. It's more on the page than I would like it to be, so I'm just going to fully recognize that. But this is a phenomenal way to think about planning with your team. So if you need this, just reach out to me. Brandy's got all my contact info. But there may be 4 ways that you can look at planning. Now, before we go into the details of this, how cool would it be if everyone on your team, and I bet they are, were different with this? How cool is that? So objectives oriented. Somebody on your team may be objective oriented, or a department you plan with. They're looking into the future. They're those SMART goal people. Then you have long range thinkers. They're your visionaries. They're able to look way out and go, you know what? This is new territory we should explore. And there's some people back here going, we haven't finished this list yet. Oh, because they're task oriented. There's a list for a list for a list. I got to know, do you ever write something on your list just so you can check it off? You might be task oriented. And then finally, present oriented. They're living in the moment. They're thinking about all the really cool things that are happening now. There can be incredible, dare I say this word out loud, synergy when these folks come together and we look at planning and we look at getting ready for the 2025 as a team so that we can be better together and in it together. And you can take that person that's objective oriented and that person that's domain and direction and so on, and you can pull them in and get some really good ideas and information for your planning. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't necessarily want to work with that one. I don't want to really, because they're going to take me into the weeds. But that is where your facilitation skills come in. And then you can get some really good stuff. Now, how do you align this with your organization? Can you learn how your organization plans? It doesn't mean you take away, but it also means now you can start to match up some of that with the way your organization puts together their planning. Next steps. I wanted to give you some assessment resources, and I've got a QR code in the next screen for the color code, which I'm excited to share about because it's been SHRM approved. Tony Robbins has gotten to the DISC game. Some of you may be DISC certified, you're the everything DISC and so on. But if you've never given yourself a chance to check out the DISC, it's really good for behavioral styles. And if you go to theTonyRobbins.com, you've got a free version of it. If you're revisiting some of your time management and some of your productivity preferences, I love watching people, if they're note takers or not, and how they take notes. I love my Remarkable because I can take notes by writing, which is my preferred, but then it will read my handwriting and turn it into something electronic that I can email and populate, for example, into OneNote or Evernote. It's a good fit for me because it gives me both the digital and the analog. So what are your productivity preferences? Finally, The reason I wanted to focus on color code for a moment is it helps you understand what drives you. It is an incredible tool for your toolbox. And I would love to come back and do a session with you all if that is approved, because back in 2023, Color Code and SHRM got together and said, yes, we will accept this for your continuing ed. And if this is presented in a SHRM meeting with SHRM members, then Color Code will provide the full profile at no cost to SHRM members, up to a certain amount, of course. So the QR code you see on your screen, and then Brandy also has a just a straight link if you would rather, but if you want to use your mobile phone, we all have it right next to us usually. This QR code will give you a link to take the free version. Now, I want to make sure that you hear me on something. I am not going to spam you or email you all the time. I cannot tell you. There are people that email me 5 times a day and I unsubscribe quite quickly. No one has time for that, especially this time of year. So I want to give you my pledge that you are not going to you didn't just sign yourself up for like nonsensical, incessant emails and text messages and all the things. That is not who I am, and it is not professional. And so I wanted to put that out there. But I hope that you will check out the color code and then reach back out to your SHRM leaders and see if this is something that you would like to bring to your chapter. So this QR code is going to get you a link to the free profile. And then Brandy, thank you for doing that. You can also click on the link in the chat. And again, if you do this instead of going to coloredcode.com, you use the full link, it goes straight to me. And that way I control how much noise and spam you get. And that is really important because we just get too much. Fair? Anyone ever taken the color code, just out of curiosity? It is my favorite profile, and I was certified back in 2017. I've done this with a lot of teams and a lot of organizations. It's a really powerful tool. Finally, would love some feedback on this session, and this is where we'll stop today. If you will be sure and include your email address, I will send you the one pager that I put together for an overall yearly review, just so you've got something kind of in hand to take a look at. And also I'll make sure to share all of the results with the SHRM team, so they've got feedback on what you thought about this session. Is this something that was a value add for your day? And Brandy, thank you for being so helpful in putting all those links in. I appreciate you. Happy to take any questions that you may have. I know we've got about 7 minutes left in our time together. Revisit, or if you just want to pontificate on the things that work for you in planning, bring it on. I want to hear it. And Chevelle, I'd love to know what you think about the disc too, if you like. All right. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here and be part of MT SHRM today. And Brandy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so very much, Kelly. Thank you so much for the information and just getting our minds ready for the new year and ready to plan and move forward. I'm going to go ahead and cut the presentation back on just our rolling slide show so you all can see a little information while I wrap up. Right, so I'll stop it right, I'll hold it right here. All right, again, Kelly, thank you so much for this rich information and this rich conversation. If you're like me, I'm leaving this conversation with so many actionable takeaways. I'm ready to get things aligned, to get things planned so we can move forward. You'll see in the chat, I included all of Kelly's contact information, the color code link, also a link to the one pager that she provided. So thank you for that, Kelly. I do want to share, I know it's the end of the year, but MT SHRM is having a networking event. So this is a little TBD as far as details. On January 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. At Penn's Mechanical Company. They will be, MT Sherm will be having a networking event. Just keep checking the site for more information on that. 2025, they will be having the certification class. January 29th is when that session is going to start. It's going to start at 5:30. It's a 13-week course. It's going to be, again, from January 29th to April 23rd. And the course is just preparation for the SHRM certification exam. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go on the site, mtshirm.org, to get more information. And if there are no other questions, if there are not any questions, let me check the chat. I'm seeing in the chat. Wonderful. Thank you all for your feedback. And thank you all for your time. Thank you all for joining us today. Again, you will get an email afterwards about with information about your CE credit. Yes, happy holidays. Thank you all.